Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Well, everyone, welcome to another episode, because this is Geeky Gentlemen! Yeah, that's the best I could do to introduce the topic tonight. We are here for our 300th episode of Geeky Gentlemen, and we are discussing the film 300. I have with me today my fellow manly men, my fellow geeky gentlemen, Steve Baxey and Rasco, aka Rasco's Modern Life, and Steve Baxey. Oh!
I'm not a man, I have long hair, I'm a girl.
No, this is true. According to the Geekvolution comics, Rasco is not a man.
Yeah.
Oh my god, serious? They're getting on that? Didn't this argument get, washed away back in the 60s with the Beatles? I thought we already had this discussion 50 years ago. What the shit, people? Anyway.
Well, I guess Michael Fassbender's not a man either in this movie.
Everyone in this movie, every other person in this movie is either bald or has long hair. Leonidas is, the one exception to that. And even then, he's got the beard going, so, I don't know. It's ridiculous. Anyway, yes, we're here to talk about 300, the Zack Snyder movie that really put him on the map. And I don't think it's too far out to say that this is the movie that got him whatever the fuck he wanted to do with the DC Cinematic Universe. I don't think that's unfair to say. And this came out in 2007, but for some reason I always think 2003. I don't know why. I honestly couldn't tell you. But yeah, this is 300. Anyone got any general thoughts they want to open this review up with?
Just wanted to point out that the reason you probably think it came out in 2003 is probably because if you take the 2 off and then reverse the 3 with the 2 zeros, it's 300.
There we go. Yeah, sure.
Oh.
Probably not.
Full case study on you.
I've probably just got a bad sense of the passage of time. Did you guys know there's a presidential election going on already? I swear I just graduated high school with the last one finished. Anyway, no, we're here to talk about 300, not politics, though. I don't know. I'm sure we'll find a way.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah, it all leads down. Someone should make a parody of the 300 trailer with Trump as Xerxes and and then Hillary Clinton can be Leonidas because she's saying the right things, but she's a complete fucking hypocrite. It'd be fantastic.
See, that didn't take long.
Right. Anyway, so is there any other general thoughts we'd like to open this review out with?
I was just going to say, this is definitely Zack Snyder's most influential film.
Mm-hmm.
Because almost every Greek mythology / history movie that has come out since has pretty much copied this aesthetically.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you look at stuff like Wrath of the Titans and Clash of the Titans, both of those movies wished they were 300. Really, really.
Legend of Hercules.
The Legend of Conan movie that came out afterwards, that wished it was this.
Hey, yeah. I will just say, somehow, I don't know how, but the sequel to Clash of the Titans is 10 times better than Clash of the Titans.
Strange.
It is. It's great. But
it's the ultimate example of the sequel that was better than the original. It's strange. But yeah, you're right. It is this is the movie that everything tried to cop for a long time. And it's weird because this movie is almost copying God of War, right? It's got a very, like, you look at some of the cinematics of God of War, and it's got a very similar style, because there was a lot of buzz about a God of War movie getting kicked off in between the first and the second game. And then this came out, and I think it kind of stole its thunder, because it really, it's got a very similar visual feel, and I'm not sure if that's because God of War copped 300 the book, or what, but just interesting how that all worked out.
Well, to be fair, 300 the book, when you sit down and read that, it's got a very different energy than this movie. This, as far as adaptation goes, it's the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory style adaptation where it's closer to the source material, but the spirit of it is very different. Because when you sit down and read that, it makes sense that that book would inspire an episode of Samurai Jack. Like, that is very much a story told through vertical pictures, and it's very slow, and it's nowhere near as bloody or gritty as the movie is in places. It's very clean, and the movie depicts the book's events almost word for word, but it adds its own Zack Snyder flavor to it. So it's very strange that people hailed this up as a perfect adaptation, because I don't really think it is, at least not in tone. But you're right, it does have the God of War feel to it, and ultimately that made for a better movie than if you just did the 300 comic tone for tone, straight up adapted. Because if you did that, it would only be like 20 minutes.
Interesting. And it's weird because I believe Frank Miller wrote a script for a graphic novel or something for the prequel, concurrent film that came out after this recently, 300 Rise of an Empire. I actually, I didn't own this on DVD or Blu-ray, so I just decided to go buy it on Blu-ray for this episode. You know, it's a fucking beautiful movie. No matter what you can say about it, it looks fucking gorgeous. Though this time watching through it, since we're already talking about aesthetic, I heard this criticism thrown at it, but I never noticed it before now. The blood just disappears. And that wouldn't be as big a problem if not for the fact that there's blood spatter every 10 seconds. Someone is just shooting blood out of different body parts. Every single fight scene, there's people shooting blood all over the place. But then if you notice it never gets on anyone. And if you look at the ground, if you just spend a lot of these big sweeping action shots that are in slow motion, so you have plenty of time looking at the ground, there's no blood on the ground. So that's really funny to me. I never picked up on that before. But there you go. I've now ruined 300 for everybody.
It's just like with the prequels when you realize that the lightsabers don't actually emit any light.
Yeah. I've always wondered how long this movie would be if you played all the slow-mo in real time.
That's a good question, actually.
I bet the movie's a third shorter.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone will criticize Zack Snyder for his slow-mo stuff, and it can certainly get overbearing at times, but god damn, it looks so pretty, I just don't give a fuck.
It's good.
This is the movie where it doesn't bother me. It doesn't really bother me to watch neither, but this is a movie where it doesn't bother me.
This is, I think, his best use of slow-mo. I think it's really good here, and it's very effective because it's that kind of story. This is one where his style was perfect for it in a way that, something like Watchmen, it's hit and miss for people because that's not really a glorifying the violence kind of book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think you can make an argument for slowing down the violence, because a lot of people will just say, oh, it just makes it into a dumb action movie. I think when they show the violence and really the gore and just how tortured people's faces are during some of that stuff, it makes you feel it a little bit more than even you do in the book.
And also,
but maybe that's
there's
just
a case
me.
for it. There's a case for it. It's just, I think with 300, people are more universally agreed on it works best here.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, because it creates a lot of godly images. Whenever you see the Spartans, when they stand up and break the arrows off their shields.
Oh yeah, that's a cool fucking
stuff like that is just sears into your brain.
Yeah, I mean, there's just stuff in this movie where like you can feel the storyboarding, you can feel the panel. Like this is kind of what I wish the Dark Knight Returns animated movie would do in certain places where it's taking an iconic panel, but it's there in like a split second, and you really wish that was slow mo because the comic burned into your brain.
Yeah, it's really annoying. I have a ton of problems with the Dark Knight Returns animated movie, and I think they need to go back and redo it. But yeah, that was one of the things, is just they show the panel for like half a second, and it worked better in year one than it did in there, right? And Zack Snyder is kind of the guy that I mean, maybe him and Ang Lee's Hulk, but we all kind of just universally agree to ignore that movie happened. But Zack Snyder's kind of the guy that brought the comic book panel to screen. Like, I know Sam Raimi did it first, but not as much. Like, Sam Raimi did it for a couple of, like, big, huge, iconic moments. Zack Snyder made a whole fucking movie of just showing you the comic book panel with this, right?
And then made a career off continuing to do that over and over again.
Well, I can't argue with that, but yes. No, I mean, like, he's really the one that started doing that, and then everyone else started doing it too. Like, Iron Man 3 did that with the Pepper Potts and the armor, right, Steve? And
yeah,
there's a lot of, like, every comic book movie has several examples now where if it's not a direct comic book panel, it's damn close to something we've seen before.
And again, to be fair, we were doing, like you said, we were doing that a little bit beforehand, but Zack Snyder did definitely popularize that strategy. And part of the reason it works with him is that he's very consistent with working with Larry Fong. And so, like, those two just know how best to make these things work together with each other in a way that, like, other comic book films, a lot of good directors, a lot of good storytellers don't necessarily know how to work with big action CG. Like, I bring up Joss Whedon all the time. Like, I love him, but he's not great with CG action. So there are moments in Avengers that are very clearly, this is the comic book panel, but it's not shot quite right because Whedon doesn't know how to work with the tech people the way that Snyder and Fong do.
Yeah, integrating CG is very, very difficult. I've been trying to do it for years now, and at best it looks okay at times with my stuff. So integrating CG and live action is a pain in the fucking ass, and it takes a lot of talent to get it right, and it takes just so much forethought. Like, I can only imagine the number of takes where, you know, fucking Gerard Butler moved his hand slightly too far to the left and it fucked up the whole shot, and they had to redo it over and over and over again. Cameron had a lot of trouble with this as well, which I believe put Avatar back like another 2 years until they could develop real-time rendering to put the actors in a very close approximation of the 3D environment that they'd be in the film. Like, as they were shooting on set. That was one of the major technologies that was invented for the movie Avatar. So just that gives you an idea of how complicated and meticulous integration with that stuff has to be sometimes.
Yeah.
And it works out. It looks really good here with literally everything else but the blood. That's gonna bother the shit out of me forever now. Ugh.
I wasn't even thinking about it until you said it.
No, seriously, go back and watch it again now, and you'll notice, like, people just gush fucking geysers of blood, and then it goes nowhere. It's just magical disappearing blood.
I wonder if it's the same way in Watchmen. Now I'm curious.
No, I'm pretty sure they had it down by the time Watchmen came out. I mean, you know, 2 years doesn't sound like a long time, but as far as how CGI has grown, that's like fucking decades in any other industry.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, visually, this is a fucking gorgeous movie in, like, a really disgusting way, and I find it funny how they kind of play with that at times. Like, one of my favorite scenes is when they're killing all the, like, wounded Persians on the battlefield, and Leonidas is just sitting there eating an apple, and he's like, they're having a conversation. I was going to go and talk to Xerxes, and he's like, oh, there's no reason we can't be civil, as he talks with, like, his mouth full and then tosses the apple to the other guy.
He's pulling a Captain Kirk from Star Trek '09.
Before Star Trek '09.
And then I made that joke in one of my Her User Reviewers videos. I did that with the
Yeah,
apple.
the asshole apple bite.
Yeah.
CinemaSins really played up on that one. Yeah, just throw this out there real quick. Gerard Butler for Bond?
Yeah, no.
No? Okay. I'm not a Bond fan, so it doesn't affect me, but just an idea it hit me. As I realized that my Gerard Butler impression is shockingly similar to my Sean Connery impression, so just throwing that one out there. Mostly because
this is
I
the
can't
movie that
do
made Gerard
Scottish
Butler a
accent.
star, right? Like he
Yeah.
wasn't a big name until this, right?
Yeah, and then he was in a lot of other things and never quite as good.
Yeah. Well, okay, he was in Phantom of the Opera. I guess Phantom of the Opera did some stuff for him, but then he did a whole bunch of shit before this movie.
Yeah, I haven't watched Phantom of the Opera, so I couldn't tell you.
Gotcha.
Who's gonna play the Phantom of the Opera in the Universal Monster movie verse? Because that's one of the Universal monsters.
That's a good question.
Yeah. So
Cillian Murphy.
I could.
That's
see
actually a really good idea.
Just throwing it out there.
That's
Yeah, all right.
I would love that.
Yeah. No, but yeah, you're right. This is the movie that made Gerard Butler really famous. This is like Michael Fassbender, one of his first big roles too, because he kind of gets forgotten in this, but he's got the best fucking lines.
We talked about that on Twitter, where like he's one of the most memorable parts of it. For some reason, we keep forgetting that he's in it.
Right?
Yeah.
That's weird. I think it's the hair, because we've just never seen him with long hair since.
No, yeah,
Like
that
a
is
major
what it
movie.
is. It's exactly that his hair is really long.
Yeah, and so it just makes him look like a different person.
Yeah, this is the movie. This was his first film, and he did some TV and stuff before this, but he was never big. This was his first movie, and then after this, he did Hunger, which he won a bunch of awards for, and then after that, he slowly became the big name actor that he was with Inglourious Basterds, and then X-Men and all that.
Yeah. And then Cersei Lannister is also in this. And she, like, just started playing royalty and scary, powerful women. I guess exclusively after this.
Yeah.
Right?
Sarah Connor? Yep, you're right.
Yeah. Like, and then she was in Dread. She, like, this is a pretty big career launcher for a lot of people, because I've never seen her in anything before either.
There's a pretty big cast to this movie, and I think all of them, like you said, in some way go off and have some sort of career. Although Gerard Butler and Fassbender are probably the two biggest.
Yeah, what's Butler been in lately? Because I know he was in Gamer, and that kind of sucked.
And Olympus Has Fallen, London Has Fallen. London Has Fallen, I think, is his most recent movie.
Yeah, London Has Fallen is his most recent thing. He was also in Gods of Egypt, which no one saw.
Oh, yeah.
That looks
And
so
then
fucking
I
bad.
think he's in the How to Train Your Dragon movies, but I don't know who he plays.
Oh, yeah. God. Alright, so Olympus Has Fallen. It's like in this weird place where it's trying to be like a fun Die Hard movie, but then it just like it gives itself too much fucking gravity at times.
But there was
some
two
of those
movies that year, right? There was Olympus Has Fallen, and then there was
White House Down.
White
White
House
House
Down.
Down.
And
Yeah.
one of them was the fun Die Hard movie, and then the other one was kind of boring.
Well, like, it's not even that it was boring. It's like it had its fun action movie moments and like fun dumb action movie, and then it did some other stuff. It was just like it felt too real.
Yeah.
Like it got like to the point where it was like actually kind of scary, and it felt like a real terrorist attack as opposed to like a dumb fun Die Hard action movie. And so it's just this really badly directed film because the script for that movie was completely different than what the direction of that movie was. But anyway, yes, this is like a pretty big career launcher for people, and I guess like it's the movie that made Gerard Butler. I think he became the biggest star out of this, but he went on to do the least recognizable stuff afterwards.
He's one of those actors that doesn't know how to pick his roles, because I know he gets offered lots of big name stuff. He was offered Batman. He was offered, I think he was offered Dredd. He was offered Bond. Like he kept getting these franchises, and he kept saying no.
He should be in Predator. Should be in the new Predator, Shane Black Predator movie.
Oh, I'd be okay with that. Yeah, like every fucking Predator movie's got the same problem after the first one. That's it's miscast, but otherwise it's perfect. And so he would be good casting for a Predator movie. And that's just the one thing they need to fire who the fuck ever is doing the casting direction for these goddamn Predator movies because they're bad at it. I'll give Danny Glover. Danny Glover would have been a better choice, but then you also need to fire whoever did the costuming for Danny Glover in the second Predator movie. Seriously, there's the shots where Danny Glover like takes off his shirt and stuff, and he looks like really fucking buff and masculine and shit, but he wears those goddamn like city detective clothes, and they just make him look old. It's a really weird problem, but it's a problem. Anyway, God, we keep getting off. Okay, 300. Rasco, take us somewhere on 300.
Oh God, you put me on the spot. I don't know what to talk about.
Rasco's gonna be fantastic under pressure when he starts working on Hollywood movies.
Oh, yeah. Oh God, I just don't know what to say. This is one of those movies that. Okay. Let's talk about this. So this is something I don't know if Zack Snyder is aware of, but there's kind of a really interesting thing with 300 where you have these Spartans that have a really overly simplistic ideology, and while it's ultimately the thing that would lead them to their downfall, but in this scenario, it's somewhat endearing. But the movie doesn't really condone the way the Spartans are as like the way we should be as a culture. They're kind of like a heavily flawed, but in this world somewhat necessary, like in the world of the film necessary.
I mean, I think they're necessary for the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes you wonder how much of that is Frank Miller versus Zack Snyder.
No, yeah, that's the thing. I don't think Zack Snyder's aware that that's what's going on in the context of the story, but I'm saying that like it's that like we're warriors, we're gonna fucking fight to the death no matter what, and that's what we're gonna do, and it doesn't matter what the odds are. This is what we're gonna do. And while obviously that's like somewhat horribly misguided if you were to take that into like a modern context of like we solve our conflicts with violence, but like in the context of the movie, obviously these are just the Spartans. So there's the Athenians and stuff like that obviously exists in this time period that the movie takes place in. So like that's not the entire world, but it's really interesting in that like the movie tells it from the perspective of this like ideology.
Mm-hmm. And it also overly simplifies or just plain out ignores things. And here's my big controversial statement that everyone gives me like the double take look for. 300 is the most historically accurate film ever made. And here's why. It's a guy telling a war story. Mm-hmm. That's why it works. The only thing they get wrong is the costuming at the very beginning and the very end of the movie. Otherwise, it's 100% historically accurate because it's a soldier who was totally there telling a story about like this big epic battle in order to rile up other troops to go fight the enemy. That is the most historically accurate portrayal of what that would be ever.
And I mean,
and so when it glosses over or just plain out ignores these weird historical things, like my favorite example is when the Leonidas, it's right at the beginning with the messenger, when Leonidas is talking about Athens and he goes, well, if those philosophers and boy lovers turned you down, I can't very well accept your offer. I'm like, oh yes, Spartan, please look down upon the boy lovers, because Spartan culture didn't encourage that and more. At all. No, not at all. It's this weird thing we all ignore about ancient Greece. There was a lot of pedophilia.
I mean, Aristotle thought that man and child was the most pure love, but we won't get into that.
Not Aristotle. That was Plato. Plato
No,
ranked...
that wasn't Plato. That was Aristotle.
Are you sure? I swear it was Plato who ranked the levels of love.
No, because I mean, every time it comes to ranking and structures, it's always Aristotle.
You're probably right. Okay. Yeah, so fuck it, they're, students, so maybe, that makes it very strange. I wonder if Plato stooped Aristotle a little bit there. It might explain why it was so shitty to him after the fact. Anyway. No, it's weird that we ignore that.
Rascal, you bring up a good point. I think it's really interesting to dissect 300. I feel like you could do a study both on who Frank Miller is and who Zack Snyder is based on just this movie and how they talk about it. Because Frank Miller, every time he creates his heroes, ever since, even when he was a good writer, even back when he was doing things like Daredevil, he has a very specific archetype of what makes a hero and what makes the kind of person he wants to write, namely this kind of hard-boiled noir type character that lives in a disgusting world and is a disgusting person, but is able to internalize that and deals with that as their character arc. That's basically what all of his characters boil down to, is like this gritty detective type character that's almost like Chinatown level of understands what's wrong with the world. And then Zack Snyder, on the other hand, is very much a director that's about not much more than what looks cool. And in this movie, it works fine, but when you listen to him talk in interviews and stuff, he's very clear about the fact that themes and ideas are not as important to him as being able to present something that seems impossible on paper. And when you break down how his commentary for 300 versus what Frank Miller thinks of 300, then you learn very quickly that Zack Snyder thinks that everything that Leonidas is doing is completely badass. Yeah. And Frank Miller, when he talks about 300, makes very clear with the fact that it makes very clear for the fact that what Leonidas is doing is amazing and encourages people, but it's also really dangerous and mind warping. And Frank Miller talks about the reason he wrote 300 is because he saw a movie when he was a kid called The 300 Spartans, which came out back in like the 60s. It was basically this exact story, but it was with added commentary that kind of explained the sides between the American and Soviet Union Cold War. So like the Persians were the Soviets and the Spartans were the Americans. And so Frank Miller got a very warped sense of history through that movie, and he explains that through the book. And so Frank Miller doesn't see this action as being glorified and amazing. He sees it as patient and disturbing, which is why the book has got that very interesting vertical arts, because you're supposed to take your time and appreciate how brutal everything is in a way that Zack Snyder wants to glorify how brutal everything is.
Interesting. And it's weird because, like you said, the dialogue's basically 1-to-1, right?
Pretty much. There are a couple characters in the movie that aren't in the comics, so their dialogue's created, obviously, but for the most part, it's beat for beat.
Yeah, and it's weird because like there's a moment when I was watching this, and like it's been years since I watched this, so I either forgot about this or I never picked up on it before. But what's the name of the dude that betrays them? Euripides?
Football head.
Football head, sure. Yeah, like he goes to Leonidas and asks to join the army and fight with the Spartans, and Leonidas tells him no, because you can't stand with your shield in the phalanx. And, you have a good thrust and everything, but since you can't protect your fellow Spartan, then you can't fight with us, but we'll let you, do all this other, like, subservient stuff. And the dude feels betrayed by that. He feels like I'm a good Spartan. I could fight with you. I could kill many Persians. I could die with honor and yada yada. And he just won't let me do that. And then he runs to Xerxes later in the movie, and Xerxes had this fucking amazing line where he's like, "Cruel Leonidas asked you to stand. I ask only that you kneel." I fucking love, because that just perfectly displays every single difference between Leonidas and Xerxes in every conceivable way, and that's fantastic. And like they have a ton of they have that great conversation that does the exact same thing, but to see it expanded outside of themselves and how it affects another person is really fucking good, and just it's got so much thematic stuff going for it, and it's everything that I love about theme, and it's impressive that it made its way through someone who, I don't know if I completely agree, but I can at least see the argument that doesn't understand theme. It's interesting to see that level of theme made it through someone who doesn't conceptually understand that.
And I mean, importantly, that moment's in the comic, so it makes you wonder just whether or not Zack Snyder understands the connotation of that. But you're right, it is a really interesting idea. And part of what I enjoy about this movie is that from the very beginning, you know what's going on is not. It's not supposed to be like this. It's not supposed to be like something like Rush Hour movies, where like, look at how ridiculous and cool and awesome this is, look at how badass Leonidas is as a kid. Like, it's very clearly supposed to tell you from the very beginning that the Spartan doctrine is one that's very dangerous and warps you. And I've seen a lot of criticism lobbed at this movie at the idea that like it's nothing but chauvinistic toxic masculinity, and that's probably what Zack Snyder views it as. But it's not what the movie is, and it's not what Frank Miller wants it to be, which is ironic, because that's what Frank Miller would eventually turn into.
Right? It's really weird that happened. Like, I don't know what happened to Frank Miller. Like, did he just
9/11.
get lost down his rabbit hole, or what?
9/11.
I guess, because he wrote that just everything about that scene with Euripides or whatever and Xerxes is amazing.
Yeah.
And then something along the way just made him flip the crazy switch and lose himself. And I don't know what happened.
No, it's very clear from interviews with him that it was 9/11. Basically, he was writing Dark Knight Strikes Again, and in that moment, 9/11 happened, and there's a very clear point in his career in the middle of that book. It's very clear in the middle of that book where he's gone from wanting to explore the darker, edgier side of comics to seeing nothing but the dark and edgy, and he very obviously lost his mind at that point.
I guess, like, really, it is such a turn, because he used to be one of the best. It used to be Morrison, Moore, and Miller, the 3 M's, and now Miller is gone. Miller has completely lost himself. And if anyone was going to go batshit crazy, it should have been Grant Morrison from all the drug use. But for some reason, it was Frank Miller.
The other thing with Frank Miller, though, and this is, I guess, a bit of a different conversation, but I do want to bring it up, but I think I notice a lot with a lot of comic book creators, particularly ones that are older now, they don't read comics anymore. They write their thing, but they don't read comics, and all of the best Frank Miller stuff happened because he was influenced by other people. Frank Miller's Daredevil only exists because he was in love with Dennis O'Neill's Iron Man. And I think by the time he had his crazy turn, he wasn't actually reading comics anymore. He just kind of became self-indulgent.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because you have to... I think that's just part of creating, and we'll get back to the movie after this, but I think that's just part of creating, is you have to see what someone else is doing and then say, I like parts of this, but I know how to do that kind of thing better. And so then you like pick up from where that left off, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you just cut yourself off from the art form and try to go and get those kind of inspirations from other things, it really murks it up, and you're not being inspired by the art form anymore. And yeah. So anyway, the movie. Yeah, like, I like a lot of the thematic stuff going on in this. The idea that, the idea of freedom is really fucked, and you just kind of have to ignore history because the Spartans had goddamn slaves. Like, that really kind of throws off the whole argument for him. They're like, we marched for freedom. The freedom to enslave other people. It's like that's where we get to my Trump Hillary comparison there. It's like, you know, Leonidas isn't wrong in what he's criticizing Xerxes about, but he's not exactly living up to his own standards, is he? And that's just really, really funny to me when you think about those things. It's one of the problems of knowing too much about history, is it can kind of ruin art, because you hear some of this stuff and you're like, but no, I loved that argument, and now it's terrible. What happened? Why did I have to learn things?
Yeah, I mean, at least with this movie, it doesn't try to look real or anything like that. So you can just be like, whatever. Like, this is clearly not trying to tell a very, even though as you said, it's the most accurate historical. Wait, what did you say earlier?
300 is the most historically accurate film ever.
Yeah. So, like, it's a case where, well, what you're saying is kind of true. It is very stylized, and it's not even trying to be like, this is actually what history looked like, people. This is where you come to learn. And it's like, it's not trying to be that, so it doesn't really bother me that much.
I mean, it's just one of those things where, like I said, we ignore that just on the whole about Greece. It's like you look at Washington, D.C., and it's every single one of those buildings are just trying to be Greek and Roman architecture. And we just completely ignore this part of the society that was like a fundamental part of the society. Like, not just Athens, not just Sparta, all of Greece, there was a lot of boy fucking. Just a lot of boy fucking. Like, let me emphasize once again, there was a lot of boy fucking. Not pedophilia in general, because by and large, they left little girls alone, just in comparison to the sheer amount of boy fucking. So, like, it's this weird thing that we just kind of ignore and we pretend doesn't exist because it makes us uncomfortable that we've based so much of our own ideals off of Greek ideals. And so I'm not surprised that the movie ignored it, but it's just one of those things where, like, once you know that, it makes some of the scenes particularly hilarious. But yeah, you're right. It's not trying to present itself as historically accurate, but because of how it presents itself, I can believe that the storyteller would omit the fact that there was boy fucking. I can believe that the storyteller would embellish and say, oh yeah, the one motherfucker, he like threw a spear and killed a rhino, and then we totally threw elephants off of a cliff, and there's like this dude, and he like jumped through the air with his sword, and he cut off this motherfucker's hand that had a whip, and then he was all like, we'll fight in the shade, bitch. Like, I can believe that because it's coming from the perspective of a storyteller. That's why it functions as historically accurate, because the context in which it is given. And that's what makes the sequel, prequel, current film so interesting too, is because it's doing the same trope where it's telling a story the whole time. And so it's got a different pace and a different feel, and like different things are emphasized than were in the first movie because we have a different storyteller. And so, like, I guess the thing that I like the most about this movie is its narrative structure, which is, I don't know, I particularly don't really care most of the time with movies, so kudos to Frank Miller, Zack Snyder, maybe? I don't know who to give credit for on that one.
I think they both deserve a little bit of credit for that, because Zack Snyder did add some things here and there. So the fact that the movie kept up the pace as well as it did shows that at least he had some talent there. Like everything with the corrupt Spartan politician, I forget his name, the guy that Dominic West plays. He's not in the comic. Oh,
okay, interesting. And it's nice because it gives you a nice little break from the action every so often. So you're not like, it's not long enough that you're like, God damn it, get back to the action. But it's just enough that you don't get overwhelmed and bored with, all the slow-mo and shit.
Yeah. Which, to be honest, I was surprised, because I'm not a guy for action scenes, but I was surprised just, like, how into some of the action scenes I was with this movie.
They're shot fantastic.
They're shot so well. I think my favorite moment still is probably the one you mentioned earlier, where, like, all the arrows are in Leonidas' shield, and he just breaks them through with his sword. It's one of the most badass things ever.
Yeah, it makes no fucking sense, but it's so goddamn cool.
I don't fucking care. It's awesome.
Right?
It's just so awesome. And then when Michael Fassbender chops off the dude's arm.
Right? And, like, that is one of the... Like, there are 3, I think, famous Spartan lines from... Like, that have been passed down through history, oral tradition mostly, so they probably didn't actually happen. But there are 3 famous lines from the Spartan Battle of Thermopylae. One of them is, our arrows will blot out the sun, then we will fight in the shade. The other was, I hear that the Persians' campfires rival the number of stars in the sky. Oh, good, I always wanted to touch the stars. And then the third one was like a story about Xerxes' scouts seeing the Spartans like grooming their hair and putting on perfume as they were getting ready for battle. And so Xerxes ordered an attack because they were the Spartans were more concerned with their girlish looks than with fighting. So those are the 3 stories that no one will ever be able to prove, but fuck it, they're cool stories, so we keep them around anyway.
My favorite line in the movie is when Michael Fassbender cuts off the guy's arm, and he's like, "Ah, my arm!" And then he's like, "1,000 nations of the Persian Empire descend upon you." That's my favorite line in the movie.
Yeah, that was in one of the trailers, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
that one.
That delivery is just so fucking bizarre, but it works perfectly.
Everything
I love how just
Michael Fassbender does in this movie is bizarre, but it works perfectly.
right.
Like, that's just this movie, is that it's... I mean, there's so much reading material on this movie about how it's fascist art, about how it's misogynistic, how it's ableist, and all of that, but, like, I don't know. I think people are taking it way too literally. It's supposed to be nothing but a guy telling a fucking awesome story.
Yeah, and, like, the idea of, it's ableist, because that's obviously in reference to Ephialtes.
Yeah.
I've probably said that dude's name differently every time I've said his name, but one of them's probably right. Ableist towards Ephialtes. That was what happened. He was a person that betrayed the Spartans. He did offer to help the Spartans, and he did betray them. Whether or not he was actually deformed, it's a fucking metaphor, people. Like, it's not about his physical deformity, because Leonidas was willing to let him fight if he could stand, and he couldn't. So it's not about his physical deformity, it's about the like, showing that his flaw of character is reflected physically. This isn't a new thing in fiction, and just to be, accommodating doesn't mean we have to throw out an entire basis of metaphor. You got to pick your battles here, right?
No, I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot about this movie that just fits under the realm of both historical context and, like, fisherman tale embellishing.
Yeah, exactly. You can't criticize art solely from a political and social context. You have to look at the metaphorical context first. You have to look at the stuff contained within the work. You have to look at the stuff contained about the work, the overarching, the metaphors within the work, and then you can start to address social and political problems that it may have. And you can't just go to that, because that creates problems. Because, you can have a character say a line in a movie and then go, oh, well, this supports fucking Nazism or whatever. But if the character is saying the line in reference to why the Nazis are bad, then that kind of ruins your fucking point. And it makes you seem like you didn't watch the goddamn movie. That shit pisses me off, because it's shit like that gives, when you have legitimate complaints about a movie's social, political, whatever context, it's shit like people that, like, can't look at a movie on its own terms first before bringing that shit in. It's what makes those two, like, cross over. It's like, oh, well, you just say that about anything. No, I don't just say that about anything. I like 300. You can make those complaints about it, but if you do, you clearly didn't watch or understand the film.
And to be fair to those commentators that didn't like this movie, it did come out in, like, a very heightened political context. Like, it's so much so that the government of Iran actually had to publicly denounce the movie and its depiction of Persians.
again, it's like, it's a fucking war story. Of course they're monsters. Who tells a war story where they want to display their enemy as, like, good-natured, beautiful people? Like, what the fuck kind of war story is that? I don't know, as a soldier, how I'm supposed to feel about going up against the most handsome, beautiful people that have a rich, vibrant culture ever are. Like, just from a, contextual level in the movie that doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Yeah, I mean,
You don't
everybody.
do that.
It's like, it's not like that's like unique to that time period either. Like to this day, everyone like Hillary Clinton is not just like a bad person to have as president, right? She's Satan. Like that's if you're an anti-Hillary Clinton person, like we still do these kind of things today, where whoever the other is, they're not just the other, they're fucking Satan. Like that's what it is.
Yeah, everyone's Satan and Hitler. My favorite was, I remember seeing this on college campus, which I think the location I saw it at made it worse for me. I saw a picture of Obama, and he was photoshopped to look like Heath Ledger's Joker, and then under that, it said socialism, and I'm like, what in the living fuck is this supposed to be a commentary on? Because there's so much about that doesn't make any goddamn sense. First of all, the one that pisses me off the most, the Joker's not a socialist. He's an anarchist. Socialism's about as far away as you can get from anarchy. Secondly, Obama isn't even a socialist.
Yeah,
Third,
it doesn't make any sense. Like, what the fuck is that person? Like, that's just somebody who's like knows the buzzwords, right? They know the buzzwords.
Yeah. Third, it's on a fucking college campus. If there's one place where someone should know what anarchism, socialism, and what kind of political platform the goddamn president of the United States has, it should be on a fucking college campus. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, it is that thing though of wanting to, it is that thing of not being able to look past your personal political feelings in order to enjoy, or in order to at least understand, if not enjoy something on a contextual level. Context is... I've yet to find a situation where context is not key, but just to cover my ass, context is key 99% of the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I really would have to stretch to think of an example where I can just say, no matter what, that's never okay. Because it's like saying that thing of, oh, X is never funny, and then you just have immediately given them the opportunity to make X funny, right? It just, It doesn't work.
No, context definitely matters, and especially now when we talk constantly about this notion of people either wanting to love something or hate something and not trying to build it on its own terms, context matters even more now. Where like, I see a lot of people that want to like give a movie a good review or a bad review based on the film's reputation before they talk about the film itself, and that again is part of the problem when you talk about something like 300, where people talk up what the movie is. And you don't see it, so you start ranting about it. But then you sit down and watch it, and it's a very different thing.
No, yeah, a great example of that, like where someone like reviews the history or their like reaction to a movie. That happened with Ghostbusters, like the newest Ghostbusters. There's this one like a little excerpt of a review, and it's like this is literally what it says. It's like, women are funny, shut up. Like that's what it says. I'm just like, it's like, get over it. Women are funny. It's so fucking funny. Because, like, that person's clearly not talking about the movie, right? They're just talking about the people who have hated on the movie, right?
Yeah. And that's a movie, like, I have no horse in that race whatsoever. I just do not care about the Ghostbusters. But I will admit, hearing, like, oh, we're going to do an all-female Ghostbusters, I'm like, that sounds like you're trying to do a gimmicky thing and that you don't really have a story for that. Because Ghostbusters is a very specific thing about a very specific cast. I'm not saying it can't work. I'm just dubious about it. And I haven't seen the movie yet. I don't plan to till it's out on, DVD or Netflix or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, I understand being a little dubious, but being vitriol and full of hate about how dare they cast a female Ghostbusters movie is fucking ridiculous as shit. Just let the movie come out, give it a chance. And once again, context is everything. If the movie is terrible, and it has to do with maybe the actresses they cast, or maybe the fact that they don't have a goddamn story for justifying an all-female crew, or making that choice really work for the film, then yeah, you can certainly hate on the movie for being a bad representation of that idea. But, like, you have to see it first.
Yeah, the funniest thing is that a lot of people that have been, like, hating on that movie, and so, like, there's two different kinds, like, right? There's the people that just think the movie looked bad, but then there's the actual misogynists, and then there's, like, the troll misogynists that aren't really, but they want to, like, irritate people by pretending to be. And, like, the people that were like, the actual misogynists that were hating on that movie are now saying that the movie is sexist against men. Which is so fucking funny because, like, they clearly don't care about sexism. That's just, they're fucking clinging to that just to have something to bitch about, right?
It's wanting to be the victim, but let's get away from that and get back to the movie at hand here. That took a weird turn. Anyway, what else can we talk about with this movie? We're talking about ableism and stuff like that, and that's it's looking past the context of the film. And if you watch in the context, it's not saying that all people with disabilities are evil, like, rotten backstabbers. It's saying this one dude is, and his physical deformity is a reflection of his character. And once again, you just can't throw out something that we've been using as a metaphor for centuries, because it's a goddamn good-ass metaphor sometimes. And so, like, reacting to things in that way is just really, really not helpful, and it brings down debate. Yeah, that's all I got on that one. Steve?
Take us somewhere else or add to that?
You choose.
Okay, so I always do this when I get put on the spot to bring us to a new topic, but I want to talk about the music for this movie, because a lot of times with action scenes in particular, and with horror movies, music can make or break a scene. So this particular movie, I think the music's by Tyler Bates, who's the guy that works a lot with James Gunn. And I'm not crazy about James Gunn's movies for the most part. I like Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's kind of about it. He's done some Zack Snyder stuff here and there, but he tends to have kind of a generic style. So he gets put attached to, like, anytime you see a movie that comes out with various composers and they all just did, like, one song each, he's usually in that list. He's just kind of like a work-for-hire composer. But I really like him in this. I think he's really good. The two best things he's ever done are the music for John Wick and this. And the music for John Wick is just absolutely brilliant. And in here, the kind of, like, mix of Greek orchestra with, like, modern action beats, I think works really naturally. The build in the music to when Leonidas kicks the messenger over and says, "This is Sparta," is just fantastic. And then the way the music's edited in, this is one of the only post-2000 movies that actually has moments of silence with no music, and it's really refreshing.
It's weird because, like, I don't know how I feel about the music, because at times when it's, like, really operatic, it feels really cliche. Like, particularly when like, Kid Leonidas comes back to Sparta, it's like, it feels like I've heard that a million times before. And then, like, at other times it feels like I'm at a fucking rock concert. Like, there's that one shot of all the Spartans, like, as they march toward the camera on the battlefield, and it's like, it feels like this really, like, rock guitar riff. It's like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, what the fuck? It's really goddamn inconsistent. It feels like, at times, like, I'm watching, a classical, historic movie, and at other times it feels like I'm watching A Knight's Tale. Because it feels like that jarringly modern in its music.
That's kind of what I like about it, though, is that like it's very much a story told now about a really cool story. So I like how unlike Batman versus Superman, for example, I feel like the random shifts in music just reflect like the ups and downs of the person telling the story. And then just like the modern rock bits of it, I feel like for the zeitgeist it was released in, it's kind of the ultimate badass, and that's partly why I like it.
I just want to say that we made it about 56 minutes in before anyone mentioned Batman versus Superman. I just want to put that on record so everyone is aware. Okay.
I alluded to it by saying that Snyder just takes things from comic books and puts them on the screen and made a career out of it. I alluded to it, but I didn't go there.
You alluded to it, but no one directly mentioned Batman vs. Superman. So
Yeah.
I want to firmly acknowledge that, because I know I wasn't going to bring it up. That came out recently, didn't it? I gotta get that. I gotta wait for that. Ratchet and Clank, and like there's one other movie coming out on Blu-ray in August that I'm waiting for.
Wait, Ratchet and Clank comes out this month?
August.
Oh, August. Okay, cool. I'll have to buy that then.
Yeah. Anyway. Shit, I totally lost my fucking train of thought. Yeah, Squatch, Rasko, you talk about the music then. Fuck, I completely derailed myself.
The music is cool. I guess it's one of those things where it's very, and like I mean this in a good way. Everything about this, including the music, is very suited to Zack Snyder, and that like I don't know. It works here in a different, in a way where it doesn't necessarily work in something. And I'm going to name drop BBS again, but like, okay, so I really like. I'm not to complain about this, but I'm going to say that I like it. I like the music cue of Wonder Woman in BBS when it comes in with the guitars, and it's ridiculous, and it's like I don't know. It's so over the top. I love it. And it works in that kind of weird, like modern splash in the score in this movie. It works because it's like you said, it's a story being told, so it's like a hype story. So like when something needs to be badass, that's what you would use to make it sound badass. Like you use like a little bit of like almost like rock beats, and then like. So, but like that's something that Zack Snyder's like always done now. Afterwards, is like every time something needs to be badass, he just puts some like into it. So, but in this it works better, right? Because it's like a hype. It's like a hype story.
Yeah. I don't know.
So it's like masturbatory on purpose.
I just would have preferred either stick with rock or stick with like operatic kind of like instrumental classic music. I don't like that it so jarringly switches back and forth. That bothers me. It just, like, I like A Knight's Tale. It's fun as shit when they got, like, the fucking, We Will Rock You start to play and whatever. I don't mind using contemporary music in a period piece. I don't know why more people don't do it. It can be really fun. But you gotta pick one or the other, in my mind.
You seen Moulin Rouge?
Yeah, I've seen Moulin Rouge. That fucking movie.
Do you hate it?
I kind of dig that movie.
I mean, it's really pretty, and that's about it.
I love the music. I love some of the musical numbers in that movie.
I mean, the Roxanne scene is fantastic. The music's great. It's just that story makes no fucking sense whatsoever. Like, Nostalgia Critic did a brilliant review of that movie, and like, there's a bit where Nicole Kidman is trying to act really, really turned on as, what is it, Guy Pearce? Fucking like reads some of his poetry to her or whatever. She's trying to act like really, really turned on, and she's like just running around the room like flailing her arms and going woo woo. And so he starts flashing Oscar nominated performance on screen as she does that shit, and you just realize how fucking ridiculous that whole movie is. So
That's confused Matthew's favorite movie. He thinks that's the best movie ever made.
Is that really his favorite movie?
No, I'm not exaggerating. He did a whole review on it. He literally thinks that's the best movie ever made.
Holy
It's
shit,
a
man.
fucking mess. I mean, it's like really Nostalgia Critic's review of it did give me, I think, my best opinion on the movie. And like, you can certainly throw arguments that he's not truly a reviewer, but at times when he comes through on a review, he does. And he'd give me my favorite opinion on that movie, which is it's a fucking guilty pleasure because just when you think about it for more than 2.5 seconds, it's awful. Like, I could say it's really fucking pretty, but, again, I don't want to just, like, quote Nostalgia Critic the whole time. It's really fucking pretty, but let's play a game. Find the shot that lasts for more than 6 seconds. It's ridiculous, dude. It is fucking batshit. Haley wanted to buy that movie because she remembered it from watching it in high school. I was like, yeah, sure, fuck it, I'll watch it. I don't love musicals, but I'll give it a shot. And we sat there for like, it's 2.5 hours long. We sat there watching it, we're like, what the fuck is going on? Okay, anyway. So there's your little mini summation of the Nostalgia Critic review of Moulin Rouge in this 300 video. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all. That is the least like compatible movie with 300 ever.
Like, I'm tempted to say it's like the same kind of thing between men and women, because like Moulin Rouge is kind of like just a chick thing where it's like dumb and stupid, but if you're a girl, you'll like it in just a very, very shallow way. But, and I know that sounds sexist, and fuck it, I guess it is. But like, there's part of me that's tempted to say that about this movie, but I don't think that's quite the case, because I do think there are things that are like legitimately objectively good about this movie. I guess I'm struggling to find a good comparison. I don't know, maybe a Godzilla movie of some sort, or just something that's just dumb. But awesome.
I mean, I use this example all the time, but it is like Pacific Rim in that way, where it's just like it's not a smart movie. It's got problems, but objectively, what it does at being a dumb action movie is good.
Yeah, I don't know. Like Pacific Rim at least makes sense.
That's true.
Unlike Moulin Rouge. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a movie that is just as dumb, literally, and not making any goddamn sense whatsoever.
Have you heard of the musical Across the Universe?
Oh, we did a review of that, actually.
You did? Oh my god, I love that movie.
Yeah, and it's got a very similar problem. Anyway, let's not. Why the fuck hasn't there been a 300 musical? There we go.
Coolest thing ever.
This is Sparta.
Rasco, will you?
Hamilton to do that? It'd be fantastic.
Yeah, Rasco, can you give us your rendition of "This Is Sparta" and I'll use it as the opening theme for Geeky Gentlemen? Will you like write a whole song and get like some music playing for that and like do the whole lyrics and everything?
There's an episode of The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody where they make a commercial for the Tipton Hotel where they live. And the song's like, at the Tipton, it's your place to stay. And that's what it needs to be for Sparta.
This is Sparta, we'll kick you in the way.
This is Sparta, stay the fuck away.
Now, Steve, you know you're not getting away without singing a verse of this. Come on. No, I'm dead serious. We're not moving on until Steve sings a verse of the "This Is Sparta" song.
I gotta find a line. I gotta find a poem now, or some kind of rhyme.
It doesn't have to rhyme.
Oh my god.
This is gonna be the clip. Steve, do it. Do it.
Okay. This is Sparta with our giant assholes and our big beefy thighs.
There we go. Yay. Now everyone click the link in the description and watch the episode and see what general silliness brought this around. Bye. Yay! I've got a clip for the episode this week. Yes,
Yay.
dude. I know. I already know what it's going to be called. It's going to be called "This Is Sparta." ... The musical.
So, Ian, I have a question for you as someone that uses green screen and edits and stuff like that.
Go.
Okay. So you talk a lot about like the special effects for Green Lantern and how like you know it's fake because you know it's fake as opposed to it looking bad on a technical level. Is there any moment in this movie where you think the green or blue screen stuff doesn't work?
There's a couple instances where I think the 3D models don't quite look as real as they should, being how close the people are to them. One scene that comes to mind is the Senate building or whatever when what's Leonidas's wife's name, when she goes to the Senate building to make her case,
Gorgo or something like that.
Yeah, you see the top of the building, and I just noticed it. Maybe it's the Blu-ray, because that is the problem with a lot of these digital movies, is they don't age incredibly well for as good as our resolution has gotten, but that's a problem that's slowly being worked out because we're getting to a point where your eye can't spot the difference in like a certain quality of resolution anymore. So that looks a little iffy. That could be touched up again. Like if this movie ever gets a re-release, that'd be something that they could remodel or just to touch up the textures. I think the same thing for the Rhino when it dies. Like it looks pretty good from medium distance, but when they get really fucking up close with it, when it's like lying on the ground dead and you can see the skin, it looks a little bit too bump mapped, to use the technical term. It just looks a little bit too much like the bump mapping and not enough like painted texturing of the model. But as far as the people on the screen, the people that were shot and then integrated into the environment, the people are integrated fantastically. I know a lot of the models, of course, aren't, or a lot of the people that they're fighting are, of course, 3D models, so that makes it even better. Again, the biggest sin this movie has visually is that it's not very... that the blood doesn't stay anywhere. It just has a lot of scenes where there's blood shooting out of people and dripping off spears and stuff, and then you get to see the ground, or you see where that blood would have naturally gone, and it's just perfectly pristine. It's especially problematic that's the biggest thing not integrated, because... oh shit, my mic's been slipping the whole time I'm talking here. It's especially problematic that's not very well integrated, because you're about to hear like a ka-thunk.
Just slowly get quieter until you take moved away.
Yeah. It's especially problematic because of how the material around them. They're in like this kind of deserty looking area, but it's not sand. Real quick, historically, the Romans filled the Colosseum with sand because it was the only thing that absorbed all the blood. So if it had been sand that they were around, that would have been fine, but it's not. You can clearly see it's kind of like a rocky, hard ground that they're around. And so there should be blood on that. And they even make it a plot point at times, because that's why the elephants die, is because they slip on all the dead bodies in the blood. But there's no blood. So it's a problem. And it's one of those things where you don't notice it until you notice it. And once you do, it becomes a more significant problem with the film. But as far as the people on screen, no, I think they all look fantastic, and how well integrated they all are. I could maybe go and look through it like frame by frame and find some problems, of course, but as far as just watching it, no, I think it's perfectly watchable, and there's no glaring issues that really stick out. And it's one of those things where, I don't have a problem with them going back to this another, I don't know, the 10-year anniversary is almost up, so going back to it another year and doing a re-release to remaster some of the special effects. and fix issues like particularly the blood. Remodeling the Rhino and the Senate Hall wouldn't be a bad idea.
We'll do that for the 300th anniversary of this movie.
Yeah, when no one's watching movies anymore and we're all in fucking holodecks. Brief side point that has nothing to do with anything, but I don't think I'll ever get the chance to talk about it. So I think Star Trek kind of made the argument that video games are art well before anybody else was really, really serious about that. Because they make holodecks, like, legit on that show. And that's a fucking video game, if I've ever seen one. So, there you go. Just throwing that out there. Anyway, yeah, I think the 3D and the integration is fantastic. This was the second big movie to do that, the first being Sin City. So,
yeah,
we talked about the whole digital versus film thing. And they interviewed Rodriguez in that, and he said, as soon as I saw the digital technology, I went and pulled Sin City off my shelf, and I was like, I know how to do this now. And I think that was like one of the first big ones. I know Pleasantville played around with that too. That was one of the first big ones for digital over film, and a full 3D set creation and stuff. And this is one of the other important steps in getting us to that point.
It seems like with all the advancement this movie made and everything it was trying to do with green screens and such, it seemed like this movie would need a bigger budget than it had, which is only $65 million.
You fucking Boazie mother. Yeah, it's insane. Because like it's before animators were making as much as they do now. Because really is the only reason I could think that.
Yeah, it's just weird to me because I feel like the way this movie was advertised, at least the way I remember it, it was supposed to be a big mega blockbuster that needed to make money, but the budget's really small in comparison to how they're advertising it and what its legacy became.
Yeah, it's insane because it's probably DC's second best comic book movie, and I'll say third because I really like Watchmen. Modern will not count Superman just because, Holy Grail.
What would be number one?
Dark Knight.
Okay.
It's up there with DC comic book movies. I hesitate. Well,
WB's best comic book movie. My bad.
Okay, I hesitate with that a little bit just because this is one of those things where like it's so close to the source material already. I almost don't want to put it in the same league as something that with like Dark Knight, which is a very different thing.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about adapting characters from comic book and stuff like that.
Okay,
it's really up there. Dark Knight, Watchmen, and this are probably like some of the top best comic book movies. Period. If not just Warner Brothers.
It's weird that this came out under Dark Horse, I think, the comic, so it's weird that it became a DC thing.
Well, is it WB the executive producer on this? Yeah, because that's why Snyder got the whole DC universe, right?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me go grab my Blu-ray, because it's going to drive me crazy if I don't know.
It's just weird because every time I see this movie logo pop with Warner Brothers, I think DC Comics, but the comic was Dark Horse, I think, so it's just odd. Although Dark Horse and DC have a pretty good relationship.
Yeah, this is also like one of the textbook examples of how you can tell that like creative execs working at like a certain studio or something, clearly oftentimes don't understand, like what something means. So like if this movie does good, that means Zack Snyder is the ultimate quintessential superhero movie director because he directed this. Like, it's so weird how people they read the worst things out of what happens. Like, they see something and they completely misinterpret what they should interpret from that. And they're like, yes, what this tells us is that Snyder is the guy to give the keys to the whole universe to.
Yeah, it is WB, Legendary, and Visual Studios.
Okay.
That's a really bad name for a production company.
Visual Studios.
Visual Studios.
It's the most generic name.
As opposed to a Visual Studios.
No, but yeah, so this is why he got kind of the keys to the DC universe. And I agree, it is weird how executives make those decisions. It's all charts and focus groups. It's like, oh, well, female-led comic book movies don't work because Catwoman failed.
Yeah.
Well, no. Let's look at what's wrong with Catwoman, and then we'll get back to that.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but when Watchmen came out, it didn't make as much money as it wanted to, right? Like, it didn't do great. So it's weird that Snyder drew it out of the park with 300.
It underperformed, but it didn't like lose any money for him, and it still made a profit, just not a huge one. But it was a critical darling.
It was a critical darling, but it didn't do well. And then Sucker Punch came out, which I know did terribly.
Yeah, and that was like his own thing, though. That was probably kind of a similar. Yeah, but that was probably like a similar thing to what Nolan got to bring him back for Rises.
That's true. Yeah,
like where they gave him
Dark kind of thing.
Yeah, they gave him Inception and Interstellar in order to get him back to do Rises. So Zack Snyder, I believe, with Sucker Punch, he said he wanted to make that movie for years. And so I think that's why you got Sucker Punch, is the studio's like, oh, well, if you do these movies for us, then we'll owe you one of your own. And honestly, I don't mind that that's how that system works, because, I don't know, for Nolan's Inception at least, it worked out fairly well. Interstellar is something people had debates about. I still haven't seen it. But I mean, it's not the best model in the world, but it works out okay. But with someone like Zack Snyder, it maybe seems like a bit of a poison pill.
And I mean,
maybe that's why that he got the keys to the DC universe, is because they already got him. Like, they probably signed a contract that no one talks about, right?
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Like, everyone's like, I'll fire Snyder, but I'm like, he's probably under contract, guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I like to imagine that, like, Snyder, this is my, like, fanfic of the real world. So this is what Snyder did. He, like, convinced everyone that he was, like, the quintessential guy that understands superheroes better than anyone. And he, like, manipulated Warner Brothers into this predicament, or they didn't realize it, that he was a fraud. That's going way too far, but that's how I like to imagine it goes down in my head.
Beats my fanfiction.
Next, on Fan Film Rewind, or Fan Film Reviews.
So, we've talked a lot about how much we love this movie, but is there anything anyone in this group wants to mention that they think is just plain bad about it?
You go first, since you hate everything.
See, I asked that because I don't know if there is. Like, I don't rank this anywhere nearly as high as you do as far as best comic book movies go, but I can't, like, pinpoint a thing about it that's bad.
All right, well, let me ask you this. As far as Warner Brothers produced comic book movies, give me a top 5.
Warner Brothers produced comic book movies.
And we'll go with modern, so Superman doesn't count. Anything in the comic book movie boom.
Okay, anything that's in the comic book movie pool that's from Warner Brothers that's like 2000 forward, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like Watchmen more than this. I like Dark Knight and Batman Begins obviously more than this. I like Constantine more than this. I think that was 2005.
But do you think it's actually better, like, objectively?
A little bit, yeah.
Really? That's surprising. Okay.
I don't like the ending of that movie, but I think in a lot of places it is a better movie than 300. And what else came out as far as DC Warner Brothers goes?
Green Lantern.
V for Vendetta.
Green Lantern, Jonah Hex.
V for Vendetta.
V for Vendetta. I'm not crazy about V for Vendetta. Watchmen I like more than this.
You already said Watchmen.
Did I say Watchmen? Okay.
Yep. You're at 4, so you just need one more.
I'm trying to. I don't know what else came out.
Yeah, I mean, like, they haven't produced a lot, so it's a hard list to come up with. But I'm just saying, I'd put it in top 3 because it's Dark Knight, Watchmen, and then this. These are some of the, like...
Are the Hellboy movies technically Warner Brothers?
Did you mention Man of Steel?
I don't like Man of Steel.
I know, I was just like, is a movie that came out. I hate
yeah, Man of Steel came out under Warner Brothers, but DC's got like such a weird track record of things. Like I know The Losers and Red technically count as DC movies.
Oh, see, I always forget those are comic book movies, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where like no one talks about them and no one has like those comics in print because something like Red was a backup story that got turned into a movie.
Yeah, it's weird. No, but like, just that's why I put it up there, because it's
Okay.
a recognizable, really well done movie. It's one of the best ones they've done for comic book adaptations, and so I understand the logic behind hiring Snyder to do more comic book movies, just like I understand the logic of why they made Man of Steel look like a Nolan movie.
Yeah.
You know, they tried to get away from that with Green Lantern, and it didn't do well. It underperformed, and people ragged on it. And honestly, you know, look at Green Lantern and tell me that it's not trying to do the Marvel movie thing.
And I mean, they got Martin Campbell for it. They hired a director that did a thing that is not necessarily in his wheelhouse.
No, he's done superhero stuff before. Green
No,
Lantern.
he's done superhero stuff, but I mean, like the kind of humor that is in that movie is not the kind of humor Martin Campbell is known for.
Oh yeah, I'll give you that. So yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like it's trying to be a Marvel movie in a lot of ways. So they tried to change tone, but it just didn't work. So that's
Yeah.
why they went back to that more dark, gritty, kind of serious stuff with Man of Steel. And that, you know, you can make arguments for Man of Steel. Most people just think Batman vs Superman is a losing battle. So like it's just, you know, I can understand the logic behind Snyder. I can understand the logic behind doing like that darker tone. I don't know. It's you can make arguments. I don't know how successful you'll be. You can make arguments as to whether or not it's worked, but it is still, regardless of either side, it is still studio think. It's trying to think, what generically about this do people like that we can apply to other movies without making it a direct copy.
Right.
Is it studio think though? Like, is it possible that that was Snyder's idea?
What, to make the Man of Steel more like Nolan, or
Yeah.
or what?
Yeah, that exactly. Like, isn't it possible that Snyder was like, oh man, I want to do that and get all the attention of making a really cool, grounded, serious Superman movie? Like, I don't know.
I would
just
see
think
that
someone's
argument
sort
if
of-
Batman vs. I would see that argument if Batman vs Superman was not a Snyder movie, and was a Nolan movie, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I would see that argument more if he continued it in Batman vs Superman, but he went back to his own thing for
Yeah,
that movie.
you're right.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I mean, it's a very
it-
conscious decision to have Man of Steel even be called Man of Steel.
yeah. Did you ever see the fan poster for Man of Steel? It was really fucking cool, where they made it. There's that Dark Knight Rises poster where it was like the city skyline looking up into the white sky, and it made the bat symbol.
Yeah.
And they did the exact same thing for the Man of Steel symbol. It was really cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really beautiful fan poster.
I'm gonna see
Just
if I-
throw that out there. Yeah. As far as like what you were asking about though, Steve, with like really negative things to say about this movie, no, my biggest complaint's the blood. It's my first complaint. I've gone back to it several times. It's the biggest
blood.
problem with this film. Yeah. Just go back, touch that up, George Lucas that shit, bitch. And then add like some Ewoks and I wonder if it would be conceivably possible to go back and like really it'd be a bitch, but I wonder if anyone could really go back to Return of the Jedi and airbrush out all the Ewoks and put in Wookiees like it was supposed to be. I really wonder if someone could do that.
I don't know how good it would look. Because
I mean,
everyone's
I
looking
could
down.
certainly do it really shittily, but yeah, you've got a point there.
Like all the actors
Um,
are expecting the things to be short, so
Yeah, you're right. I don't know.
Also, here's the thing that I've always kind of liked about the Ewoks. If the Empire built their shield generator on a planet inhabited by a bunch of giant fucking Sasquatch monsters, that'd be the worst place you could ever build something like that. It makes more sense to build it on the planet with the little pussy, like, bear things.
The Ewoks are fucking terrifying, dude.
Well, yeah, but you wouldn't expect them to be, right?
Dude, you don't even understand. Luke Skywalker ate Stormtrooper. How fucked up is that? No one ever talks about this. Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Leia Skywalker ate cannibalized Stormtroopers. Because, like, no one thinks about it. Like, the Ewoks, when they captured Luke and Leia and Han and everybody, they were gonna eat them.
Yeah.
And then later, you see the Ewoks have a bunch of fucking empty Stormtrooper helmets. They ate the Stormtroopers, man!
Game over, man! Game over!
Right? And, like, it's even more fucked up because you look at the Ewoks' teeth, and they have, like, really flat teeth that you would only see in animals that are herbivores. So that means they eat meat. They eat people for fucking fun. That's terrifying.
Circle of life. Clone
Right?
meat.
Oh.
It's ethical.
No, it's the Empire expanded and started hiring out an actual army as opposed to cloning it because Sidious didn't like the weakness of growing his entire army.
No, I'm aware, but I'm saying that they.
Yeah, I know. I had to nerd you for a moment.
Yeah. I was debating whether or not to say that because I knew it would be inaccurate.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Well, actually,
Rasco, do you have anything negative about the movie?
I don't know. This is such a weird movie because it's not like a movie that really it's really strange because it was already laid out, and I have this with Watchmen as well. It's like the thing was laid out, and as long as it's what it was, it's kind of hard to debate because it's like kind of past the status of like. Like Watchmen's a really hard movie to critique because like that book's been around for so long and everyone's done it. It's almost like, what can I say about that? I don't know. It's really hard. I don't know.
So you just can't think of anything. It seems to be doing what it's trying to do properly then.
Yeah.
And Steve, you didn't have anything either?
Yeah, I mean, the most I can say about this movie, it's not even really a criticism. It's just, it's a good movie that I can't seem to find any flaws in, but I confess that I'm probably not looking too hard because I'm having a good time, and this is not usually the kind of movie I think too much about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the most introspective, question your life after watching it movie. It gives you a couple good ideas to chew on. Nothing too complicated. It has its contradictions here and there, but it's allowed to because it's not like this. You can't judge this one movie without judging a lot of other things, right? So it's not. Not everything has to be the exception. So yeah, I think it works fairly well. And there's some issues here and there, but they were still learning with the technology. Like I say, 2007 to 2009, we have Avatar in between that. I don't think Watchmen got to benefit from all the technological advancements in Avatar, but Avatar's a big fucking deal. And so there's a lot of shit that happened in between then, and it's like in any other industry that would have taken decades. So,
yeah,
really, I those are completely forgivable flaws to me, and yeah, I think this is a good ass movie. So let's go ahead and do a rating. Rasco, you go first.
I give it 300. 300 axe, like bladed hand, fat people out of 5.
Okay, I could top it. Okay, I give this movie 4.5 out of 5 weird goat-headed people things that are supposed to seduce me. I don't know what the fuck that thing was, and it always creeped me out. Right? Oh shit, if I just gave myself hiccups again, I'm gonna be so fucking pissed. Dude, I've had hiccups 3 times today.
Hiccups
and I think I just gave them to myself. I think I just gave him to myself again. I'm gonna be so goddamn mad. Steve, what do you rate this movie?
I will give it 4 unrecognizable Fassbender long haircuts out of 5.
And damn it, I gave myself hiccups. Motherfucker.
You should try swallowing some
4
sugar.
No, I found a solution today. What you do is you plug your ears and hold your nose at the same time, and then drink water out of a straw while bent over. And I have no idea why, but it fucking works. So I'm gonna go do that.
Oh, well, have fun with that.
No, I seriously, I found that earlier tonight before I did the news show, and it fucking worked. And I was hiccuping for like 2 hours before that. And now I'm just like a fucking mess of like fucking guttural noises. God damn it. Alright, everyone, thank you very much for watching our 300th episode of Geeky Gentlemen. We are your Geeky Gentlemen. I'm the philosopher.
I'm the politician.
And I'm Sparta.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen. And we will be discussing things. God damn it!